Why does God allow evil to happen? This is a very volatile question, and it's a high point of contention, period. This question of why God allows evil to happen is a beautiful question, and it does not come from a state of condemnation or hatred. It usually comes from a state of pain. And this question and the answer to this question does not need to be a long video. It does not need to be a very fleshed out response. It's relatively simple. Now, this is going to get relatively metaphorical and symbolic. God, in the beginning of time, was met with a quandary. Does he make people that are able to perceive and live and have a consciousness and awareness and free will? However, they're able to use that free will for whatever they please. Free will, that freedom, they're able to have freedom towards evil acts, wicked acts, beautiful acts, good acts, and everything in between? Or did God want a reality filled with unconscious automatons that aren't glorifying him or glorifying creation in any way because them themselves cannot actually observe? They're not observers because they don't have free will. And in order to have a consciousness and awareness and a soul, you have to have free will, because anything outside of free will puts constraints on your perception and your individual choice. Therefore, it makes it to where you are not a conscious person. You are not an actual person with a set individuality and image under God. Something else we could draw parallels to. God does not want us to commit evil. However, his desire and the necessity for us to be able to commit evil is more important to God than eradicating evil itself. He's putting our ability to be real people with souls over his hatred of evil and sin. And the beautiful part about this is that with God's gift of free will, we don't have to partake in wickedness or evil. And all evil in the world is by men. It is by flesh. But in the broad scheme of things, it's always by flesh. It's always by our individual choice, not divine order, but our egocentric desires. So this is not God directly making evil in the world. No, it's not. It's God making beautiful creation that is able to live purely and authentically and honestly without any strings attached. I'm fairly certain that the story of Adam and Eve in the garden is a symbolic and metaphysical abstraction of free will and of consciousness and of individual choice. The apple does not represent free will itself, but the apple does represent free will's ability to make that choice. In order for you and I to be conscious beings, there needs to be free will involved. Consciousness and free will directly rely on each other, and those two phenomena cannot take place without one another. It's a very synergistic and symbiotic relationship that free will and consciousness hold with one another. In it of itself, we have to have free will in order to be creatures with souls and creatures with independence and creatures with a mind. What constitutes free will is the ability for individuals to make their own choices in reality. Anything outside of that makes it to where it's a script-based reality. Therefore, it's not an actual present established reality. It's fabricated and something on par with that of a simulation. God already knew what was going to take place in that story. However, he established the environment for that story. When we ate that apple and participated in observing the knowledge of evil and good, that was the purest form of us practicing our free will. It was our free will and our choice that was gifted by God that allowed us to make the individual choices that allow the gates to be open, the chains to be removed from our ankles, and for consciousness to fully envelop mind, body, and spirit. However, we're now able to commit evil just from our choices. Am I saying that the apple is directly synonymous with consciousness itself, with free will itself? I'm not too sure. However, what I can say is the apple symbolizes our individual choice and ability to make choice. And it was a gift sent from God, perhaps not intended for us to utilize, but necessarily intended for us to be able to use. It's God's gift that we're able to do that which we will. It's quite a bittersweet phenomenon. However, it couldn't be any other way. Adam and Eve already had free will, but free will is meaningless without options. The tree and its fruit seem to represent the ability to obey and or disobey. Without the tree, we would be free in theory, but not in practice. The apple is not the essence of sin. The apple is the price of authentic choice. God didn't want robots to inhabit the garden. He wanted beings capable of love, because anything outside of that aren't real beings. They are not real entities. Humanity bit into freedom itself, the ability to define, create, defy, and even destroy. And it's all an echo of God's abundant power. So in summary, the apple is not free will itself, but the manifestation of choice that proves that free will exists. The apple is also symbolic of the knowledge of potentiality, what can be when man steps outside of the divine order. I hope everybody was able to gain something from this video, and if you guys have any questions or any ideas to add on to the video, please put them in the replies or the comments. But yeah, it's definitely a very tense issue, and the story of Adam and Eve in the garden is infinitely complex, and you're able to flesh that out and dissect that for hours upon end. So obviously there's much more to talk about. So in summary, God hates sin, but God loves our independent choice more than his hatred for the sin. However, each sin infinitely pains God. And then when you put Christ and the sacrifice that he made on the cross into the picture, it becomes so much more infinite in meaning. Hope you guys have a good day, good week, good month, and I'll see you in the next one.